Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another week here at the RGM Experience podcast, a safe place for people to come in, tune in, sit down, have a cup of tea, and have a chat. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a bit of a legend on his hands. We've got Ian Prowse. Hi, mate. How you doing?
Hello, pal. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Thanks. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm no problem.
Where do we find you today?
I've just got in from doing the school run,
Yes.
and it's very, very rainy and cold and windy here in Liverpool. I think the Mersey is relocated in the city, so I am a drowned rat, but I'm in, and yeah, I've completed my parenting task for today.
There we go. There we go. That's your deed done. That's your deed
Yeah,
done.
yeah. I
How
still
is
can't believe I haven't messed it up. I do say this all the time. All my mates are like, "What? You've never ever messed up being a dad once? You've never been too drunk to get to wherever you're supposed to be?" And I'm like, "Not yet, no. 12 years now." So,
And what are you going to reward yourself with now you've done your task for the day? Because that's what us blokes do, innit?
so I'm going to reward myself by just having a good old natter with you.
Oh, there we go. Well done. Well said, mate. Well said.
I
Well
couldn't. There's still to this day. There's nothing more that thrills me more than sitting in the boozer with your mate,
Yeah.
talking about football, politics, and music, and just
Yeah.
talking it. It's
Yeah.
fantastic, isn't it? I love it.
It is great. It is brilliant. It is brilliant. I wanted to ask you straight off the bat because you followed RGM recently on Twitter, and then while
Yeah.
we were setting up this interview, you sent a little message about. I put a tweet out for people that don't know, and I just put the King got announced they're having cancer and stuff. So I just put a little post on Twitter saying, "You've got this, pal." Thumbs up type thing, you know. And you said, and you mentioned you can talk about the royal family if you want. So go on, what did you mean?
Well, obviously, because I don't know you, so I thought I'll look
Yeah.
at Twitter because you'd followed me and I
Okay.
followed you back and all that.
Yeah.
And one of the first tweets was this the sympathetic royalist tweet, as I saw
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Fair
And
enough.
I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting because I'm an absolutely committed Republican,
Right.
going
Fair
to
enough.
my very first Pele single.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
probably more so now than I was then because it's just wild, what the way that the country is run, and having had a child as well now, I view it through that prism and all. In that when she was born, by law, she's not as important as their children.
Yeah.
I find that idea just winds me up. So that adds to my republicanism.
That's fair enough. I'm not any kind of royalist myself personally. I don't have any strong opinions on the royal family or not really. I did see the King in Doncaster races a month or so ago,
Oh, did you?
and it made I don't know. I kind of got a little bit excited. I unexpected got a bit excited about seeing him. I don't know why.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah. There you go. I mean,
I get a bit like that with celebrities though. Sometimes, some people are just a bit weird around.
I discovered. I know what you mean. Yeah, I know. I get like that around Damien Dempsey, and he's also one of my closest mates.
Oh, no.
I discovered recently that I live in the most Republican constituency in the whole country as well. Liverpool Riverside, which where I am right now in the city centre, is the most Republican constituency in the whole country, apparently. Us, and then Glasgow Central.
Why do you think that is?
There's obviously historical reasons for there's social reasons, and historical. The reason would be is because Liverpool is traditionally not a very English city. It's in England, but not of it, as the saying goes. And a lot of the people here, if they trace their families back more than one or two generations, find that they didn't come from here. So I think that's probably it.
Yeah, is it more Ireland, Scottish kind of heritage?
Yeah, there's a lot into the stew of Liverpoolness. There's a lot of African people, Chinese people, Jewish people, Polish people, Italian people. But the key ingredient to the stew, whether you like it or not, is the Irish. Right. The capital of Ireland and all of that. There was no such thing as the Scouse accent up until the Irish famine flooded the city with refugees. The whole north end of the city was a refugee camp in 1847, and the collision of all those different people coming in with the indigenous people who were already here created a brand new authority and way of thinking and way of speaking, which would be called Scouse, for want of a better word.
Interesting, just like in different pockets of the country where there's certain elements of the community that are scared of people coming from over there coming here.
Yeah.
And it just like frustrating and a bit weird about, and I don't know what they're scared of. They're watching the news too much.
I know, and it's a really, it's a bizarre thing because I was brought up or came of age, in the 80s. So I'm like, I'm 16, 17 as the 80s kicked off. So we had like the Falklands War, and then we had the miners' strike, and we had Margaret Thatcher throughout it. So we were deeply politicized. And I remember vividly that back then racism, was the orthodoxy. So you'd hear racist words all of the time. That was what people used it without any shame or whatever. It was just peppered in everyday language, and it was the orthodoxy. And since then, over time, it's become unorthodox to say those words. And there's obviously a reaction against it now. They would call it woke, they'd be, oh, I'm not woke, and we hate woke things and all this sort of stuff. So I've seen that change, but as I say, I was politicized really by the miners' strike. So I'm part of that when you're young and becoming aware of socialist ideals and thought, and you read The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist, and all the rest of it, and you become like a bit of an activist. And so I'd argue with people constantly in pubs about racism. If somebody said the N word or the P word or whatever, I'd argue with them as a young, as a teenager, 16, 17, 18. And so all of these things that we, again, talking about now, it's weird that it just keeps coming round again. So I find myself, again, having the same old bloody arguments,
Yeah.
about it. And
it's like woke, in it. The word woke, it used to be like if you call someone woke, it's like they're a bit cool and that. But now it's being politicized quite a lot, that word. And
it has, yeah.
And that word's changing its meaning. And
but if I hear somebody ranting against woke,
yeah,
then you know where they're coming from, don't you? You know what? If you're going to scratch the surface,
yeah,
you're going to find your traditional racist, basically. Just below that, you know what I mean? If they're so vociferous about it, you could have a discussion about maybe that bit's gone too far or this or that.
Yeah.
But the basics of it is it's not right and correct to use language which insults Black people or Asian people or disabled people. You're not going to say some of those words that we used to say about disabled people, because it is wrong and it's horrible. And I will, I'll argue that we should be much more respectful. And as a society, we grow better if we don't talk about people like that,
And it doesn't help the language from those fucking Tories, even just this week. Even coming from right from the top.
Yeah, exactly. And when people say Tories these days, and obviously here in Liverpool, and it kind of began with Jamie Webster, God bless him, but it certainly comes up. It comes up in our gigs a lot of the time as well, with people singing, fuck the Tories, and it becomes a thing, and then that spreads around, and Tory is almost a dirty word across the board now. I include Keir Starmer in that,
right,
and Rachel Reeves. They're Tories to me. I find them as every bit as disagreeable as I find the Tories, because they're just the Tory B team to me. So I'm fighting the battle on that front as well. And I know that, and that's an interesting thing in itself, isn't it? I'm like my age now. I've been doing this a very, very long time. And at the next election, I won't be voting Labour, and that'll be the first time that I've never done that. And I counted the other day in local elections and in general elections, I've voted Labour 50 times, often with my, fingers crossed behind my back, because I haven't, I've felt I haven't agreed with it or whatever. But this time I'm not going to. And nobody should vote for a party that doesn't even know how to stand up against a genocide, as far as I'm concerned. Never mind everything else.
It's always strange, even in America, where there just seems to be two points of view, and you've got to pick one or the other. It's just not. It's not enough these days. There's got to be more choice. There's got to be somewhere.
Yeah.
Up or down rather than left or fucking right.
Oh, mate, you said it much better than I just did. Honestly, you're absolutely right. The being just a binary choice now, it's just not enough, and it's not serving us properly, and it's not democratic at all. We had a leader of the Labour Party there between 2015 2019, and he basically wasn't allowed to lead. His own party made sure he got beat. So that's not democratic, is it? He was providing actual opposition, Jeremy Corbyn. He was actually saying, well, you've got the Tories over there believing in all these things, and we've got these opposing views, which are markedly, radically different. And that's a proper choice, isn't it? Now, you're not going to get a choice between Starmer and Sunak, to only yesterday, the whole 28 billion green thing. It's just outrageous, and they just lie to your face as well.
I know.
It's
What do we do
unbelievable.
though? How do we change it?
Yeah. But I mean, I don't. I think you start by changing by not giving them your vote and respecting your own vote. Because I'm politically minded, although I don't consider myself a political artist in any way or songwriter, but I am politically minded. You couldn't not be being brought up on Merseyside, really, or in the 80s in this country in general. I kind of like feel as though if I give them my precious vote, which I respect deeply, my own vote, then you're just going to go round and round in America, in a circle, constantly in a neoliberal circle, going round and round, going, oh yeah, but you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. Lesser of two evils is still evil. So I think if a significant amount of people either don't vote or vote for Green or Independent Socialist or something, then we're going to force some change. That's the way I'm thinking at the moment about it. But as I say, I'm not,
Well, I'm glad I tweeted about the king anyway. That what's
yeah. But it's fascinating, isn't it? That's what makes the world go round, is talking about all this stuff and trying to change the world for the better. I got this from when I was a kid, and all of a sudden, I was thinking about this the other day. Why did punk rock and new wave have such a profound effect upon me? Apart from, it was obvious that this was my generation's music, even though I was slightly too young for it. I felt the shockwaves, powerfully as it went along at the beginning of the 80s and everything. And I think it was because we were listening in the charts was bands like Mud and the Rubettes and Shawaddy Waddy, who even as a 10-year-old, you knew it was deeply uncool, kind of horrible retro 50s music with no soul at all. Then all of a sudden along came these bands kicking and screaming. So I was politicized by Joe Strummer and Paul Weller. I always say that I owe Paul Weller the greatest debt, because whatever he hit me with when I went to see the Jam for the first time when I was a kid is the fuel that I'm still running off to this day, because it was so powerful to a young boy. Yeah. And here's a fella singing about being working class from the council estate and all the things that I could relate to, and it's still there with me to this day.
Well, you mentioned him earlier, Jamie Webster.
Yeah.
Similar kind of mold, and it really is singing about what he's seeing, he feels politically, and his community and that kind of stuff. Is passionate about Liverpool and flying the flag for the city again, really.
Yeah, I think so. And as my mate Nasha says, it's great that he's having a go on the swings, and him having been in Frankie Goes to Hollywood, arguably our second ever biggest band from this city, he would know what it's all about. So fair play to him. I'm digging his message.
Yeah, well, just while we're on Liverpool and the local music scene, that kind of stuff, I'm fascinated. I've been doing a bit of research, and I didn't know about the Monday Club that you did at the Cavern, me personally.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I've been digging into it and just seeing what it's all about, and that just looks like. Are you still doing that at the minute, by the way?
Yeah, we've been doing it for 12 and a half years now, and they asked me to do it all that time ago because I know all the guys at the Cavern anyway. The guy who runs it now used to be Pele's t-shirt salesman.
Ah, okay.
He got in touch and he said, would you like to do an open mic? Would you help us out on a Monday? We've got a free slot on a Monday. And I went, absolutely not. No, I'd rather saw through my own thigh with a blunt junior hacksaw than listen to lads come in singing Wonderwall, you know. And about a week later, I'd been out with Miles Hunt, my dear friend Miles Hunt, and I'd been to stay at his house down in Shropshire. He lives in the middle of bloody nowhere, and we went to his local pub, and there was this thing on where they were giving artists 15-minute slots, and it's way on the middle of nowhere where he lives, and every artist that came on did their own songs and was brilliant. So I went back to the Cavern and said, okay, let me give it a name, and I need to give it an ethos. And the ethos is strictly no covers. And but I want all the gear sets up so bands can play. We want poets. If somebody wants to put a play on, they can. Comedians, it's all about creativity. And they went, we'll give you 6 weeks. We don't think it'll work, but we'll give you 6 weeks. And here we are. And I've had everybody playing there. I've had Dr. Robert, Miles Hunt himself. We've had Lee Mavers. We've had the real people have come down and played. Ian McNabb. We've had Hurricane Number One, and loads of other things have happened there. And I take it really seriously because I see the young boys and girls coming in through the door, fearful that they're going to have to play to the audience for the first time, some of them, but also full of, hope and enthusiasm for their own music. And I recognize it immediately. And so I look after them as best I can. And we've had some success stories out of there. Red Rum Club, another band from here in Liverpool who do really well. They were basically born at the Monday Club. So, yeah.
Well, funny enough, I follow a lot of music. I've got Red Rum Club on the list. They're playing the Liverpool Arena.
They are, yeah.
Got the fourth album out soon. I've interviewed them a few times. Love those boys. I can remember seeing them at the Rocking Chair in Sheffield on a really tiny stage years ago.
They're great. Great. I always say that I was the midwife that bore them, and they love that.
How do you see the strength of like local Liverpool music now coming through the Monday Club and in and around the city? And
it's amazing, because Liverpool is when the music industry collapsed completely at the beginning of the century, and like Napster came along, and all of a sudden music became free, and they couldn't hold back the tide anymore, and like that old model of you worked hard and you got really good and then you get signed, and that collapsed, that whole thing. So the industry collapsed with it. That never happened in Liverpool, in that Liverpool didn't collapse along with it. It's as vibrant now, and there's as many bands being formed on every street as there ever was. It's a proper center. It's Music City, and it kind of doesn't matter that there aren't all of these labels like, hanging around like they used to when I was a kid. When Pele got signed, there was like always loads of labels, 20, 30 labels all sniffing around, seeing what was the next big thing to come out the city, because they knew something was coming. And in this day and age, there's still loads and loads of bands being formed, and they're getting launched, and they're doing, some of them doing good and some of them are struggling and all that. And there's still, every week I go down to the Monday Club and there's 3 or 4 people I've never seen in my life before who get up and sing their own songs. And I always wonder, where the hell do they come from? But it's the city, It's mad. It's mad that it is like this, but it is.
I do often ask a few Liverpudlian fans and have this conversation with them around obviously with the Beatles, and you're never going to get away from the history that band created and where they're from. Yeah. It does seem to take over the city quite a lot. Do you feel like that can sometimes hold back a new generation because it's surrounded by these, the biggest band in the world? I feel like I've got a germ of an idea of a conversation there, but I've not quite sussed it out.
No, it is a conversation that happens in Liverpool all of the time, right. And notwithstanding around the Cavern itself, because the Cavern often gets levelled at it, the criticism that it's just a museum, and the first thing that they always do is they point at me and they go, if we're just a museum, how come Prowse's night's going on so well? How come Prowse, even though he's on the road all the time playing his own music, he says to his to his agent and his promoters, which I do, don't ever book me on a Monday. I want to go home and do the Monday Club. And so therefore there's a vibrant, creative, on the button scene, which isn't stood still or reverential about the past. It's happening now. And so they can sidestep that criticism. And I think in Liverpool, people have just come to they absolutely love the Beatles. You know, people sometimes try and be, arsey or whatever, but the bottom line is we absolutely love the Beatles, and we love them on many different levels. Personally, I never, ever want to hear She Loves You ever again in my entire life, because I hear it every bloody day as I walk down the street, coming out of one bar or whatever. But I'm still as fascinated by the story of them and some of the rarer songs as I ever was. And there were so many great, I was talking about this only today. There's so many great things that they went through, the Beatles, take the whole thing where they went to India. That's endlessly fascinating what they did in India. Or the next bit where they're kind of like the Get Back, documentary. What was going on there? That's fascinating.
I'm obsessed with that. I've watched 4 times, all of it.
And you kind of go, so we sit in the pub and we go, George Harrison broke the Beatles up, didn't he? George had a cob on with the Beatles because he wasn't getting his songs on, and he was the one who really caused all of the fucking trouble, wasn't it? So, it
weren't Yoko. We were fed.
No, it wasn't. No, I was just talking to my mate about that. The amount of racism and sexism she would have faced in a uncompromising way, still to be, kind of really reckoned with, I think. So it's endlessly fascinating, the Beatles. So we do love it. And there's been so many other great bands as well. It's just part of it, it's all part of the great big stew of this mad city. And it's only small, by the way, Liverpool.
I went, the last time we were in Liverpool was December, and I went to see John Lennon's house, Paul McCartney's house. I did the Strawberry Fields thing, went to the Little Salvation Army for a cup of tea. We
did a television show called Under the Influence about 13 years ago, and we did the pilot, and it never got picked up. But it was with Bob Harris, Whispering Bob. He had this idea of this TV show, so it was all filmed and done and edited and put together. And we recorded, me and Ian McNabb recorded in Forthlin, in McCartney's house, in the front room, and it's all done out like it was there. And we sang and recreated Please Please Me, because there's a famous photograph of them writing it. John's got his glasses on, and because I'm left-handed, it was really authentic, so my guitar's pointing into the fireplace, and Ian's is pointing away, and we did it and did the harmonies and everything. And when we recorded it, Bob Harris was in the kitchen watching the monitor, and when we finished it, he came in and he looked like a ghost, and he just went, "That was the weirdest thing, watching you two do that exactly where they would have done it, all those years ago, and nail it, all the harmonies and the way that it is, just kind of the next generation spiritually passed on, as for Liverpool musicians." And it never got put out in the end. And I must contact Bob and ask him, why didn't they just lash it on YouTube or whatever? Yeah. It was brilliant, For me personally, when I think of Paul's songwriting and John's songwriting, I take great inspiration from the both of them.
Just really. when you see him actually Get Back in it.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
When it just that flash of lightning and you see it, you never see it, do you?
No.
Even that flash that just noodling out an idea on guitar, and
that's the thing, and that's the beauty of it. 1 minute it does not exist, and then the next minute it's born, it's in the world, and it's never going away because it's that good. So they're both a huge influence on me and my songwriting, certainly.
You mentioned him earlier, the Chief, Miles Hunt. The last time I saw you live was down at the Manchester Ritz, just in December, I think it was December.
Oh yeah, just gone, yeah.
Supporting the Wonder Stuff, and that was that were like just an amazing night. I'm a massive Wonder Stuff fan anyway. I'm just like ridiculous. It's just been one of my like childhood bands. Stuff.
yeah.
How has it been as a performer over the last few months and years?
It's
keeping going, after all these years. When did you start? Pele started in 1989, was it? How many years is that?
19. Well, we started a band in about 1989 and we got signed in
Yeah.
1991.
Yeah.
And the curious thing was we got signed to Polydor, who the Wonder Stuff were on. But we
Right.
never became friends until 2005, when my next band, Amsterdam, got asked to support the Wonder Stuff on tour. But considering that I've got curly hair, he's got curly
I
hair,
was going to say, have you got the same hairdresser?
we got the same hairdresser.
Yeah.
We're both obsessed with the Jam and a lot the same, and the Water Boys. They had a fiddle player in them. We had a fiddle player. We have a lot of the same musical references. We never hung out back in the 90s. But we've made up for it since. So yeah, it was. I mean, who wouldn't love those punk pop early Wonder Stuff singles? Are just, even to this day, are fantastic, aren't they? They're outrageous bits of songwriting. They really are, and I think they're the best they've ever been on this tour we've just done with them now. Music, the way the band is sounding, it's the best they've ever been.
Even because they did the full Construction of a Modern Idiot album, which historically
Yeah.
has been Miles's favorite album of it all. He's finally got around to doing it all live because he's been going through them all.
Yeah.
Just they are, yeah, such just. It's just amazing just how great they are live. A lot of people think, oh, Wonder Stuff, but when they see him live, they're just they're blown away by him. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. Me and Miles broke all drinking records after the Birmingham show, just talking shite in the corner like we always do. And I said, it's the bass player. The bass player is why you're so good these days. He's going, yeah. Because, as I said at the top of this conversation, there's no more fun than with your mates talking about music, and it's beautiful, isn't it? So that for the whole Pele thing was, it was the Water Boys. We got so many reviews. When we were getting interviewed on the telly or whatever we were doing, they would always bring up Dexy's Midnight Runners. I was going, no, you've got it completely wrong. I could take it or leave Dexys, but it's the Water Boys for me. Yeah. It's the Celtic soul. It's Irish kind of soul music is what really turned my songwriting into the God Us a Deal, So that was where it came from. I mean, my music was, I got into music because of the Clash and the Jam and the Stranglers and Blondie and all of the rest of them, and Elvis Costello, obviously. But it was, my songwriting only became any good after I'd heard the Water Boys, and that was what that's what musically really turned me on.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking through your back catalogue. Signed to major labels. You've seen it all within the music industry, haven't you?
Yeah.
And I know it's called the cottage industry these days, or DIY, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. When I was speaking to Miles when we had him on the podcast, he said an interesting thing about it. Like, it feels like he's going to stop recording because it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work to even get your money back producing these things. So he's always going to do live music, he says, but he kind of fell out with the recording of the stuff. How do you feel about it after all these years and still doing your thing?
Yeah, we played Shrewsbury recently, and he came along and we had that conversation as well. And he said, I'm thinking I'm done. And he kind of looked at me and I went, nah. Well, from my perspective, I'll never be done. I'm always thinking about writing the next thing. And I think there's just too much talent innately bubbling in him that will just begin to seep out, whether he likes it or not. Might be wrong, but I hope I'm not, because I'm sure he's got some, the favorite record of Miles is that, and I've told him this, that he's ever made. It for me is We Came Here to Work, because it's just a body. To me, it's like its own world, where he's saying something, and if I put it on one track I have to listen to the whole thing, and that's inspiring. I'd like to hope that he's got more of them in him.
Yeah, keep it up, Miles.
Yeah, but maybe he hasn't to, and if he doesn't want to do it, then fair fucks, he's done enough.
Fair enough. So, as I say, you've had these major record labels, you've seen all the ups and downs of this music industry we all love and hate at some point with it all. How do you look back on your career and where you are now? How do you look back on how it's been?
the thing is about all of the models of getting on in the music industry, all of them, there's a common thread, a baseline to it all is you've got to be good. Yeah. You've still got to be good, whether it be the major deal, the cottage industry, the major indie deal, the whatever. You've got to be good because you can't force human beings to get their money out the pocket to buy either your CDs or vinyl, or to get up off the couch and go out the door and go and watch you. You've got to be good. You can't blag people to do that. And that's the bottom line. And I find that it's much better for me personally these days as an artist, as a songwriter and a musician, because I enjoy it so much more, because you're not full of fear if you are any good. Yeah. When you're 25 and you're waiting to see if the NME are what they're gonna say in their review, you're full of, oh, we're great, this, that, we're a great band, because you're young and you're supposed to be like that. You're supposed to be like Liam Gallagher and say we're the greatest band ever. But really, at the bottom of your mind, at the back of your mind, you don't know. It's bravado, And then you get to this position where I am now, 30 years later, and you realize, oh, if I wasn't any good, I wouldn't be. I'd have had to get a job at some point, So you appeal to enough people for it to be your living, and that makes me feel much calmer and at ease with the whole thing. So I enjoy it so much more now. You don't have to bullshit to yourself more than anything. You can do it, and I take it really seriously. I take the art, the craft of songwriting really seriously. I don't want to repeat myself. I want to do something slightly different every time you put out a new album or something. And I want to learn. I want to get better, and all of those things. So for me now, I've been saying this lately. It's like the tortoise and the hare. A lot of my contemporaries kind of went, and had big hits and everything. And we didn't have the big hits. We had the minor hits. Yeah. And I just slowly plodded around the track, and it's got to this point now, at this point in my life, whereby it's as great as it's ever been, and you can tell that, by being able to afford to get the alien or.
Yeah, fair enough. How do you know when a song's good?
That's a good question, because every songwriter will tell you that and Bruce Springsteen included, because I've heard him say about this, you think you've got one, you go, oh, they're going to love this. And they don't, I think he was talking about Girls in Their Summer Clothes. He thought, this is it, this is a hit, I'm going to go back up to the levels of Dancing in the Dark. And it kind of didn't click. I mean, I don't like it for that particular track. But so you don't know. I see this as well. I see this, people write song when they've written a song. People who are involved in music, whether it be professionally or they're trying to get somewhere, they'll put something on social media. Just written a great new song there. No, you don't get to decide. The audience decides if it's a great song. You might go, I've written a song and I'm really happy with it, but you don't lay anything else on that song because you don't have the right. The audience tells you. So you might think to yourself, oh, I've got one here, this is good. But you might get that wrong. I wrote a song for the last album called Battle, and I thought to myself, this is one of my best and strongest songs. And it turned out that it was. So I got that one right. But I've had other ones in the past. I've thought they're going to love this one, and they've just been lukewarm about it. So you never can tell it. You can't. You're too close to it, really.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of even when you're recording in the studio, how do you really know when to stop? You can get that high out as perfect as you want, but who really gives a shit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to worry about any of that, because I'm in the incredibly fortunate position of having a producer and very close friend, and my entire musical songwriting career is between me and him. It's a partnership between us. I'll write the songs, but Tony Kiley, my producer for the last 25 years, me and him thrash out how it's going to be. He sorts out all of the sounds. We will go through the arrangement. He'll select which musician is going to play where, and he's in complete control of all that sort of stuff. And between the two of us, and he never bullshits me. He'll just go, that song's not good enough. And if we don't have enough good songs, the album doesn't get made. So we tend to keep the threshold level high. And I'm very, very fortunate to have him there to do all of that. If you listen, to go back, talk about the Waterboys again, I think they've had an album out a year for the past 10 years or whatever it is. There's so many and some fantastic songs on them. But also, if they'd just done 2 albums in those, the last 8 albums, they would have been 2 of the best records they've ever done. But they haven't. There's just so many other songs on it, which to me don't make the grade, and they've needed somebody to come in and edit it and say, no, that's not good enough. They're not the only ones. Obviously, there's a lot of that goes on, but I'm very fortunate to have Tony Kidey.
I just love watching the enthusiasm you've got after all these years, and I'm 45. I feel like I'm now myself, and just like being in around music. Where does the enthusiasm come from for you? Just to keep creating and enjoying yourself out there.
I'm just like that as a person.
Yeah.
I'm quite an optimist. And the reason I'm an optimist is because the world goes through some awful and terrible things, but it always continues and comes out of it, and it's very easy to look on the bad side of things, but actually, if you do really dig down, there is a lot to be thankful for and optimistic about. I'm not religious in any way, but it might be more of a spiritual thing. But for me, for example, for all the bad luck I've had in the music industry, didn't get the big hits, didn't get the bits of luck here and there. If I examine my position now and where I am in the world, I'm a very, very, very lucky human being. Just being born into where you are in this country or this time, you've got to appreciate how lucky you are. You could have been born in a lot of different places and a lot of different times where life was a lot tougher than it is now.
Yeah, I just worry about all these young bands that are taking everything so fucking seriously these days, because they've just got the world at the feet, and they're worried about so many different things. It's just great to see people that have had the holy grail of having a career in music and the creative industry, and it is possible to do it without being on the getting always being on a major label, or even being on a major label. You can still do it and do it DIY, and if
the only thing they should be worried about, any of them, is the music. Again, I always say there's only one thing you got to keep your eye on in this whole game, and it's not the money, it's not the fame, it's not the adulation, it's not being recognized down the local pub, it's not pulling a girl or a boy, it's not buying a fast car. The only thing that counts is the music, and you have to keep your eye on the music and treat that with respect, and then everything else will follow. If you take your eye off the music, then you'll end up in trouble. And I think this is when you look at most bands rather, they tend to make their best work early on, don't they? As they take their eye off it. Some of the great bands. I mean, and fair play. Once you've achieved that greatness, it's very, very difficult to keep it up.
And they're worried that they're getting into the mid-20s and thinking that's it, I'm past it for the music industry as well. I think a lot of them these days, when that tide seems to have changed quite a lot in the last 15 years anyway, where there's a lot of older artists in the 30s, in the 30s, proper old people, compared to young people still starting off careers and making it in the music industry. That seems like one of the nice changes that's happened in the industry a bit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I wrote my most famous song, Does This Train Stop on Merseyside, at the age of 39. So, which is a long time into my songwriting career. And then I think it was something like 7 or 8 years after that, I wrote a song called Home, which is also one of my favorites, one of people's favorites, rather, of my music. And then a song called Here I Lie about my daughter. And then there's Battle from the last records. So for me, to be able to still be a going concern as an artist is the most important thing about this, which means focusing on the music and paying respect to the music. That's what really turns me on the most about doing this whole thing. And that's where the enthusiasm that you're talking about really comes from, you know.
Well said, well said. You mentioned him earlier, and I just want to bring up Elvis Costello because my missus, one, just has him on all the time. She's obsessed with him. How was your relationship? You know, how has he influenced you and played a part in your musical career?
It's funny because he's a good mate, you know. But when I was 14, I went to the local record shop and bought Accidents Will Happen. Just don't know where to begin. And it just blew me mind. What a brilliant record. And then all of a sudden, later on in my life, I'm releasing duets with him on EMI. I'm in his band on the Jonathan Ross television show. We're opening up for him every night on 2 UK tours. And it's, you do kind of, it's not really, he's not Elvis Costello, the singer to me. He's EC, me mate, you know, we'll have a laugh. But sometimes you go, oh, Jesus, it's Elvis Costello, yeah, you know. And Rosie's like, Dad, your mate's been in The Simpsons.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
You know, I go, oh, yeah. And she's met him a couple of times as well. She thinks he's great. But the key thing, again, about Elvis is he's doing that thing. His last few records have been fantastic. There's been some brilliant songs on it, you know. The last 3 albums, wow. There's been some songs there which well stand up to his classics, you know. So Mr. and Mrs. Hush, what a record that is. So again, he's doing the same thing, you know. He's like paying respect to the music. That's what he really loves doing, you know. He can't stop himself. He's out there constantly creating. And so he inspires me greatly from, you know, if I watch him, I go, wow, that's the way to do it. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to watch him from close quarters.
Well, we do through RGM, we do support a lot of new bands and that kind of stuff. And they do watch these and listen to these podcasts, which is great advice, guys. Stop being so worried about all the things that you can't control. Just make the music, man, and just make it the best you can.
You make the music, it'll come to you.
Yeah.
People love music, you know. They don't care how they get to consume it, you know. I was talking about this again today with a friend of mine, Al. If we do the big Christmas gig that we do every year, that, you know, 1,100 people will turn up every single Christmas we do. The people who turn up, they don't care who the promoter is. They don't care who's managing me. They don't care if the backroom staff have changed. They just don't care. You know, they care about you and the songs. And that's what it's all about. Everything else can be sorted out. But what can't be sorted out is if your songs aren't hitting the mark. So you've got to pay respect to that.
Yeah. Well, the music will always stand out for itself. You're back out on tour soon. Starts on the 23rd of February in Sunderland. How do you prepare for tours these days? Because one thing I've noticed about Miles on is he don't drink a bottle of wine every gig anymore.
No.
He used to take a bottle of wine on every time.
I know.
That's changed to a can of Guinness now. So how do you prepare for it?
I think he's enjoying it a bit more, probably, which is lovely to see. I'd probably only have a glass of lager now, whereas I'd have, you know, a pint before. Yeah. It is easier to stay as focused and in control as possible as you get older. This tour that we're going out on is an acoustic tour, and I've never done such a big acoustic tour. Yeah. So it's a tour of, and again, to refer to Milo, you get the opportunity to look into the whites of people's eyes and tell them stories about your world, because it is, if you've done this for as long as we have, you do have some wild stories. You have some fascinating stories, things that haven't happened to civilians, you know. And to relay those stories on really works in the acoustic setting. So I have some stories that I will be telling as we go around the country. And I'm percolating them in my mind now. And by the time we go out there in a few weeks, they'll be finished and ready to go. And I've called it the Mersey Hymns Tour because I've noticed that Liverpool, the city, and the river itself have become a bit of a muse to my songwriting in the last 2 albums. I've written songs which directly reference parts of the city or the river itself, or say my daughter has also been a muse. The joy of becoming a parent later on in life. So that's why the album's going to be called that. And of course, I've written plenty of songs in the past which are inspired by this area. And it's as I always say, Liverpool's not. It ain't better than anywhere else, and it ain't more special than anywhere else. The thing that it is it's different, and it's different for human geography reasons, historical reasons, and has brought about why it is, in England, but not of it. So, and there's a hell of a lot of music comes out this place, considering how small it is. So that's the basic idea behind.
Nice.
The tour.
And we had a little chat earlier. You're re-releasing or bringing out the third Apelli album coming out in March, kind of.
No, we did that. We did
that.
Yeah, no, we did that. I think we did that about a year ago. Well, during the lockdown, I did a Friday night show. I ended up doing 40 of them live on Facebook for free because we had nothing else to do. I'd come back off the Costello tour with a load of merch unsold, and I thought, well, I'll just do a gig on Facebook, and it took off. And it became a thing whereby about 1,000 people every week would tune in. And it wasn't just pointing my iPhone. It was my partner pointing my iPhone at me and me singing. It wasn't as dry as that. It became like an entire variety show. My daughter would sing. We'd have a competition to see who was the worst behaved public figure of that week. And it was like an old-style variety show. And we'd all get drunk together, me and 1,000 people online, And even to this day, when I do gigs, people come to the merch stall and ask for a private hug, and they will just say, listen, you saved my life there during lockdown. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just had your Friday night to look forward to. So I knew that I was providing something for the community there. And so what it led to beautifully was that there was a massive re-interest in a lot of my music, which hadn't properly been released. We'd made a third Pele album for Polydor, but the relationship had fallen apart before it came out. So we finally got to put it out, and then we did the 2 early Amsterdam albums, which were only ever mail order before we got signed in 2005. So a lot of that music had never been properly released. And this year it's the 10th anniversary of my first ever solo album, which didn't do half as well as the last 2 did. So all of the new fans that have come on board don't really know about it. So we're going to re-release that, master it properly, and add to it the 3 songs which should have been on it to begin with, which were 3 of the best songs, which the record company took off for a best of. So that's going to come out soon, and on vinyl as well, which never happened first time. So I'm always at it, and I'm constantly.
I know, mate. I love it. I love it. Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a link in the description of this podcast if you listen,
lovely.
or in the description of this YouTube, for you to get involved and to get
We're playing all over the UK throughout the spring. I think Shrewsbury, London, Appletree, Barnoldswick, Liverpool, and somewhere else have sold out. But there's plenty of tickets for the other places. And I'm also out opening up for the great Damien Dempsey for 7 dates in March as well. So
if somebody's hovering over that link now, mate, what would you say to them to click it? What would you tell them to do?
If you come, we will raise your spirits.
There we go.
Raise your spirits. We will, if you're struggling, we will give you the armory to keep going, to believe in yourself. If you're not struggling, we will give you a top night's entertainment. Yeah. And if you're both, you'll get some tears, you'll get some sorrow, some joy, you'll get some daftness, you'll get a lot of fun, you'll get a bit of politics, and you'll just get a bit of humanity. That's what it is.
Well, I'm clicking away straight away, and I'm sure the people watching this are.
Lovely.
Mr. Prowse, I really appreciate your time joining us today for this podcast.
Thank you for asking.
All the best, mate. Just wish you all the best, and thanks for your time. Appreciate
Of
it.
course.